in Gratitude and Growth. How Thankfulness Unlocks Unlimited Prosperity. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Narrated by Roman Cross. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. Most people are taught that prosperity is a destination, a glittering mountaintop where only the chosen few get to plant their flag. The rest are left climbing, straining, exhausting themselves on the never-ending ladder of more. More money, more recognition, more stuff. Yet for many, no matter how high they climb, the view stays the same, narrow, blurry, unsatisfying. But what if the real treasure isn't at the top? What if it's beneath your feet, hidden in the overlooked corners of your daily life, waiting for you to notice it? Gratitude and Growth is not a book about wishful thinking or positive vibes for the sake of it. It's a guide to flipping the script on prosperity. It reveals how gratitude is not an accessory to success, but the very engine of it. Gratitude sharpens your lens, revealing cracks where you once saw walls, showing you streams where you once saw deserts. It's easy to forget this in a world wired to focus on what's missing. But as Melody Beattie wisely said, gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. It's the bridge between where you are and the abundance you've been missing, not because it wasn't there, but because your eyes were fixed on what you didn't have. Inside these pages, you'll find no lectures, no hollow affirmations, and no empty promises. Instead, you'll discover stories, metaphors, and practical tools designed to help you stop chasing and start cultivating. You'll learn how gratitude compounds like interest, how it turns victimhood into stewardship, and how it reveals the abundance hidden in plain sight. This isn't about settling, it's about seeing. Are you ready to adjust your lens? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Invisible Soil of Success. In a sun-bleached village where hope seemed as scarce as water, the villagers once gathered at dusk to count their failures. The fields refused to yield, the hills mocked them with their arid slopes, and every day felt like a losing battle against the stubborn land. Whispers of a curse floated through the streets, thick as the dust that clung to their worn shoes. They believed they were trapped in a barren world, where prosperity was for others, far beyond the reach of their tired hands. Then came the old traveler. He arrived with no seeds, no tools, no promises of rain. All he carried were tales, stories of distant places where the people, faced with similar struggles, transformed their fortunes not by waiting for miracles, but by honoring what little they had. Skeptical but desperate, the villagers listened as he told them of gratitude, a word they associated more with sermons than survival. He invited them to gather each night, not to lament, but to speak aloud the things they still had, however meager. At first they scoffed. What good was listing scraps when their bellies were empty? But curiosity and hunger won. That first night, their words were thin and hollow. A single surviving goat, the warmth of a neighbor's fire, a patch of wild mint clinging to a forgotten rock. As days turned into weeks, something shifted. They noticed the cracks in the hills where water whispered through during the rainy season. They saw herbs sprouting in corners they'd once ignored. Their attention, once fixed on absence, pivoted to presence. Within a year, what was once a wasteland bloomed into a quilt of gardens, streams, and fruit-laden trees. The land hadn't changed, their eyes had. This parable isn't just folklore, it's a mirror. In today's world, people chase prosperity like a mirage. They sprint after more money, more possessions, more recognition, believing fulfillment is always a few steps ahead. Yet like the villagers, they often overlook the treasures hiding in plain sight. Gratitude isn't sentimental fluff, it's a lens, a refocusing tool that reveals the opportunities, resources, and relationships already within reach. Research backs this up. Studies from leading psychologists show that when people focus on scarcity, their brains literally shrink their field of perception. It's like wearing blinders, but gratitude rewires the brain to scan for what's working, for openings, for leverage points others miss. It's mental judo, flipping what feels like obstacles into stepping stones. Think about it. Have you ever bought a new car, and suddenly that model appears everywhere on the road? The cars were always there. What changed was your attention. Gratitude works the same way. It tunes your mental radar to spot abundance, not lack. This doesn't mean ignoring hardship or pretending everything's fine when it isn't. It means refusing to let what's missing blind you to what's available. It's a subtle rebellion against the narrative that says you're not enough, you don't have enough, and you never will be enough until you have more. The traveler in the village didn't bring tools because the villagers already had them. What they lacked was the vision to see the tools disguised as small blessings, overlooked cracks, and stubborn herbs growing in forgotten places. That's the invisible soil of success, gratitude. Tonight, when the lights dim and the world tells you to measure your worth by what's absent, pause. Ask yourself, what am I standing on right now that I've been ignoring? What streams might be trickling through the cracks if only I had the eyes to see them? Next, we'll explore the silent story scarcity tells and why most people never question it. Chapter 2. Scarcity's silent story. Scarcity doesn't shout, it whispers. It creeps into conversations, into the way people talk about their futures, their finances, their bodies, their relationships. It lurks behind phrases like "I can't afford to" or "people like me don't get to." It's the quiet story that plays on repeat in the background of so many lives, convincing them that the world is a pie with only so many slices and someone else is always getting the bigger piece. It's not just mindset, it's biology. The human brain is hardwired to spot threats, to focus on what's missing or broken. Evolution taught ancestors to scan for dangers, a rustling in the grass, a gap in food supplies, a shortage of shelter. That vigilance kept them alive, but in the modern world, where most dangers are abstract rather than physical, the same wiring turns into a trap. It causes people to magnify their problems and minimize their possibilities. A study by Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir revealed that scarcity actually taxes the brain. When people feel they don't have enough, whether it's money, time, or social standing, their cognitive bandwidth shrinks. They make poorer decisions. They miss options that are right in front of them. It's like their mental lenses fog up, distorting their view of reality. There's a story of a man who won the lottery. Overnight, he had more money than he could have imagined. But within 2 years, his life had unraveled. Bankruptcy, broken relationships, isolation. What happened? He'd lived so long in the story of scarcity that when abundance arrived, he didn't know how to see it, much less manage it. He blew it, chasing the same emptiness he always had, just with a bigger bank account. Scarcity isn't about resources. It's about narratives. When people believe there's not enough, they hoard. They compete. They close themselves off from collaboration, from generosity, from trust. They think, if I help you, I'll lose. If I share, I'll go without. They build walls instead of bridges, not realizing that the very act of wall building keeps them locked inside their own small world. Gratitude is the counter-narrative. It tells a different story, that even in the face of lack, there is still something to honor, to build upon. It turns the focus from what's missing to what's present, and what people focus on grows. Neuroscience calls this the reticular activating system, the brain's filter. It tunes attention toward what matters to a person. When people obsess over scarcity, that's all they see. When they practice gratitude, they train their minds to spot opportunities, resources, allies, and solutions. Scarcity tells people they're stuck. Gratitude reminds them they have agency. In a small village in Africa, farmers once suffered through years of poor harvests. Aid organizations brought food, but the underlying issue remained, until one woman suggested they shift their meetings from complaint circles to opportunity circles. Each week, they shared stories of small wins, a patch of ground that yielded more than expected, a new planting technique learned from a neighbor. Within months, their attitudes shifted. They collaborated more. They experimented with new crops. Scarcity hadn't vanished, but it no longer controlled them. Scarcity is like a lens smeared with grime. People look through it and think the world is dark, unfair, empty. They forget to clean the glass. Gratitude is the cloth. Right now, ask yourself, where has scarcity been whispering in your ear? What stories have you been telling about what's possible for you? What if those stories were lies? In the next chapter, we'll pull back the curtain on society's grandest illusion, that prosperity only comes from more. Chapter 3. The Prosperity Myth Unveiled. There's an old saying that you can't chase the horizon. The faster you run toward it, the farther it moves away. Yet most people live as if the horizon holds their happiness, their success, their enough. They sprint toward promotions, bigger homes, fancier cars, thinking that once they arrive, the finish line will greet them with open arms. But the truth is, the line keeps moving, and the chase never ends. Society sells a version of prosperity that looks like an endless ladder. Each rung promises fulfillment, yet every time you grab it, another one appears above. It's a clever trick. The marketing machine thrives on it. You're not thin enough. You're not rich enough. You're not successful enough. And conveniently, there's always a product, service, or status symbol that claims to fix that gap. But what if the gap is an illusion? A Harvard study on happiness tracked people over decades and found that after basic needs are met, more money, more possessions, more status don't significantly increase long-term well-being. In fact, the relentless pursuit of more often leads to dissatisfaction, stress, and burnout. Like the villagers staring at the hills, people forget to see what's already blooming under their feet. There's a story of a fisherman in a small coastal town. A wealthy businessman vacationing there asked the fisherman why he only caught enough fish to feed his family. The fisherman replied, "Because I like to sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, and spend evenings with my friends." The businessman scoffed. If you fished more, you could buy a bigger boat, catch more fish, expand into a fleet, and make millions. The fisherman asked, "And then what?" The businessman grinned. "Then you could retire, move to a small town, and do what you like, sleep late, fish a little, play with your children, and spend evenings with your friends." Prosperity isn't about the size of your boat. It's about the richness of your days. When people tie prosperity to external accumulation, they hand over control of their well-being to forces outside themselves. The economy, the job market, the stock market. They live in reaction mode, always waiting for the next thing to make them feel secure or successful. Gratitude, by contrast, anchors prosperity internally. It shifts the measure from what you have to how you engage with what you have. Imagine someone standing in a room filled with treasure chests, yet their eyes are fixed on the locked door, convinced the real treasure is outside. That's how most people live. They miss the wealth of relationships, skills, experiences, and resources already surrounding them because they've been conditioned to believe prosperity only counts when it's bigger, shinier, or approved by others. The prosperity myth thrives on comparison. Social media fuels it, bombarding people with highlight reels that make their own lives feel small and lacking. But the truth is, no one's life is as perfect as their curated posts. Everyone has cracks in their hills. The difference is, those who practice gratitude don't pretend the cracks aren't there. They see the beauty growing from them. Ask yourself, whose definition of prosperity are you chasing? Is it yours? Or was it handed to you by advertisers, influencers, or well-meaning but misguided mentors? Prosperity isn't something you arrive at. It's something you recognize. It's the quiet joy of enough. The deep breath of contentment in the midst of imperfection. The willingness to honor the small, the simple, the steady. In the next chapter, we'll dive into how gratitude works like mental fertilizer, turning even the driest soil into fertile ground for new possibilities. Chapter 4. Gratitude as mental fertilizer. In the natural world, barren soil doesn't magically transform into lush gardens overnight. It needs tending, nutrients, and most importantly, the right conditions for growth. The same principle applies to the mind. Left untended, the mental landscape hardens into patterns of scarcity, frustration, and self-doubt. But introduce gratitude, and the mind begins to soften, open, and nurture the seeds of creativity, collaboration, and resilience. Science confirms what ancient wisdom has long whispered. Studies from the Greater Good Science Center show that practicing gratitude rewires the brain's neural pathways. It boosts dopamine and serotonin, the brain's feel-good chemicals, while reducing cortisol, the stress hormone that fuels anxiety and fear. Gratitude doesn't just make people feel better in the moment, it reshapes their entire mental ecosystem, creating fertile ground where new perspectives and solutions can take root. Consider the story of inmates in a maximum security prison who began a daily gratitude circle. On the surface, it sounded absurd. Gratitude? In a place defined by confinement, violence, and regret. But as the prisoners shared what they appreciated, sunlight streaming through a small window, a hot meal, a letter from a loved one, their outlook shifted. Tensions eased. Fights decreased. Some inmates even began mentoring others. The walls didn't vanish, but their sense of possibility expanded within them. And gratitude acts like mental fertilizer because it doesn't ignore the weeds. It helps people see the flowers growing between them. The human brain has a built-in negativity bias. It clings to threats like Velcro and lets positive moments slip away like Teflon. This kept ancestors alive, but in modern life, it means people often overlook what's working, what's supporting them, and what's quietly nourishing their progress. Gratitude interrupts this bias. It forces attention toward the good, even when the bad feels louder. Some skeptics dismiss gratitude practices as fluffy or naive. They say, "How can I be grateful when things are falling apart?" But gratitude isn't about denying pain or pretending everything's perfect. It's about acknowledging the full spectrum of life and choosing to honor what sustains you, however small. It's about resilience, not resignation. A farmer knows that even the most depleted soil holds hidden nutrients. It just needs the right inputs. Compost, water, patience. Similarly, even the most cynical, hardened mind can soften under the daily nourishment of gratitude. It's not a one-time event. It's a practice, a ritual, a muscle that strengthens over time. Practical tools make a difference. A gratitude journal, where each day you jot down 3 things you appreciate, has been shown to increase happiness levels within weeks. Gratitude letters, writing to someone you've never properly thanked, can deepen relationships and dissolve long-held resentments. Even the simple act of pausing before a meal to acknowledge the hands that brought it to your table can reframe an ordinary moment into a sacred one. Gratitude doesn't require grand gestures. It thrives in the small, the mundane, the easily overlooked. Tonight, instead of scrolling through the endless highlight reels of social media, try this. Sit quietly and ask yourself, what supported me today? What showed up for me, even in small ways? It might be the softness of your pillow, the taste of fresh bread, the kindness of a stranger's smile. Let those moments soak in. Let them nourish the mental soil where your future growth depends. Next, we'll explore how gratitude sharpens your perception, helping you see cracks in the hills where streams of opportunity are already flowing. Chapter 5. Seeing the cracks in the hills. Perception shapes reality more than most people realize. 2 individuals can walk the same path, face the same obstacles, and yet one will see only walls while the other spots doors. What makes the difference isn't luck or intelligence. It's the lens they look through. Gratitude, when practiced deliberately, sharpens that lens, revealing cracks in what once appeared impenetrable. Selective attention is a powerful force. Psychologists call it the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Once you become aware of something, you start seeing it everywhere. Buy a red car, and suddenly the streets are filled with them. This isn't magic. It's your brain's reticular activating system at work, filtering the world based on what you focus on. When scarcity dominates your attention, your brain obliges, showing you more lack, more obstacles, more reasons to give up. But train your attention toward gratitude, and the brain begins highlighting resources, openings, and hidden pathways that were there all along. Imagine two gardeners standing before the same cracked, arid hillside. The first sees only dead earth, cursing the drought, blaming the terrain, folding their arms in resignation. The second kneels closer, noticing small rivulets where rain has carved channels into the rock. They spot tiny green shoots poking from crevices. They see not a dead hill but a living puzzle. That's the power of perception. In business, this plays out daily. One struggling company might obsess over lost customers, spiraling into fear-driven decisions, slashing budgets, and cutting staff. Another, facing the same downturn, might shift focus to its most loyal clients, asking, what are they still buying? How can we serve them better? That slight pivot in attention often spells the difference between collapse and comeback. Gratitude sharpens perception by forcing you to notice what's working, no matter how small. It invites curiosity, opening your eyes to resources and connections you previously dismissed or ignored. The cracks in the hills become possibilities, not just flaws. There's a fable of two wolves, one representing scarcity, the other abundance. The wolf that wins is the one you feed. Feeding gratitude means nurturing the wolf that hunts for solutions, that sniffs out cracks in the rocks, that sees beyond what appears to what could be. Even in relationships, the lens of gratitude changes everything. A couple stuck in cycles of complaint and criticism begins a simple practice. Each night, they name one thing they appreciate about each other. Over weeks, their focus shifts. They notice gestures they used to overlook, a cleaned kitchen, a warm embrace, and a kind word. The cracks in their relationship were always there, but now, instead of seeing them as proof of failure, they see them as invitations to grow closer, to tend what's tender and build upon it. Seeing cracks is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's understanding that nothing is flawless, yet everything contains the seeds of potential. Try this tonight. Walk through your home, your workplace, your neighborhood, and deliberately look for the cracks, the small, imperfect, overlooked corners where something might grow if only you gave it attention. Maybe it's an underused skill. Maybe it's a neglected relationship. Maybe it's an old idea waiting to be dusted off and tried again. Gratitude doesn't ignore the cracks. It sees through them. Next, we'll explore how gratitude transforms the mindset from victimhood to stewardship, empowering you to nurture what you have instead of waiting for rescue. Chapter 6. From Victimhood to Stewardship. Victimhood is a seductive state. It offers comfort in blame, relief in resignation, and a peculiar kind of safety in surrendering control. When people believe they're at the mercy of circumstances, they avoid the discomfort of responsibility. After all, if the system is rigged, the economy is broken, or the world is against them, what can they really do? This narrative lets them off the hook. But it also locks them in a cage of their own making, a cage built not of steel but of stories. Gratitude shatters that cage. It pulls people from victimhood into stewardship. Where victimhood says, "This is happening to me," stewardship whispers, "This is happening. Now what will I do with it?" It's a subtle but profound shift. Victimhood fixates on what's lost, stolen, or broken. Stewardship asks, what remains? What can be nurtured? What can I still build, shape, or repair? Consider a small business teetering on the brink of closure. The owner, drowning in frustration, spends weeks railing against the market, the competitors, the unfairness of it all. Meanwhile, loyal customers still trickle in, unsung employees show up daily, and a core product still holds value. It isn't until the owner shifts focus from what's slipping away to what's still standing that the business begins to pivot, adapt, and regain footing. Gratitude fuels that pivot. It trains the mind to see what's still within reach, to recognize assets hiding in plain sight. Stewardship doesn't deny challenges. It acknowledges them fully while refusing to let them define the entire story. In leadership, this mindset is transformative. Leaders stuck in victimhood blame their teams, the market, or regulations for failures. Leaders practicing stewardship focus on nurturing their people, refining their processes, and leveraging their existing strengths. They ask better questions, listen more deeply, and act from a place of ownership rather than helplessness. A nonprofit struggling with dwindling donations once gathered its team not to lament but to list every asset they still had. For a supportive community, an engaged board, a passionate staff. From that list, new strategies emerged: collaborations, grassroots campaigns, creative fundraising events. The scarcity was real, but it no longer held them hostage. Gratitude turns people from passive recipients into active participants. It reclaims personal power. It shifts conversations from "why is this happening to me?" to "what is this situation inviting me to learn, to create, to transform?" Victimhood focuses on the locked doors. Stewardship jiggles the handle, checks for windows, or builds a new door. Even in personal lives, this applies. When relationships sour, victimhood blames the other, catalogs their flaws, replays the injuries. Stewardship asks, what part of this is mine to own? How can I show up differently? What do I still appreciate, and how might I nurture that? Gratitude makes the invisible visible. It spotlights the small embers still glowing beneath the ashes, inviting people to fan them into flames. Try this exercise. Think of an area in your life where you feel powerless. Now list everything within that situation you still influence, however small. Your attitude, your effort, your words, your choices. Watch how the narrative shifts from stuck to stirring. Victimhood is a heavy chain. Gratitude is the key. Next, we'll explore how gratitude, when practiced consistently, compounds over time, turning small daily acknowledgments into unstoppable momentum toward prosperity. Chapter 7. Gratitude's compound interest. Prosperity doesn't arrive in a flash of lightning or a single windfall. It grows quietly, day by day, often unnoticed, until the harvest surprises even the sower. Gratitude works the same way. It compounds. Small, consistent acknowledgments build upon each other, creating a momentum that transforms not just mood, but outcomes. Think of it like planting bamboo. For years, there's little visible growth. The seedling barely pushes above the soil, leading many to believe it's a dud. But beneath the surface, the bamboo is building an intricate root system. Then, seemingly overnight, it shoots up feet at a time. Gratitude builds a similar unseen foundation. Daily expressions may feel insignificant, listing 3 things in a journal, pausing to appreciate a colleague, savoring a moment of joy, but over time they rewire the brain, shape attitudes, and influence behavior. Science backs this up. Studies show that gratitude practices improve mental health, strengthen relationships, and even boost physical well-being. People who consistently focus on what they're thankful for sleep better, experience fewer aches and pains, and report higher levels of happiness. These aren't temporary highs. They're compounding benefits that gain strength with repetition. In the financial world, compound interest is celebrated as the 8th wonder. Just a little, let it grow over time, and the returns multiply beyond what most expect. Gratitude offers a similar payoff. It doesn't erase problems, but it builds resilience, creativity, and optimism, the very traits that fuel success over the long haul. Consider the story of an athlete who trained relentlessly for years, rarely in the spotlight. She kept a small notebook where, each night, she scribbled down something about her day she was grateful for. Some days it was big, a personal best, a win. Other days it was small, the comfort of her worn sneakers, a smile from a teammate. She credits this practice not just for her performance, but for keeping her grounded through losses, injuries, and setbacks. Her gratitude journal became her anchor in storms and her amplifier in triumphs. Gratitude's compound effect isn't just internal. It radiates outward, shaping interactions, teams, and communities. When leaders express appreciation regularly, they build cultures where people feel seen, valued, and motivated. When families practice gratitude rituals, sharing highlights at dinner, and expressing thanks before bed, they foster bonds that weather conflicts and hardships. The secret is consistency. One grand gesture of gratitude is like a single drop of rain in a drought, nice, but insufficient. Daily, deliberate practices are the steady watering that nourishes growth. Over time, the effects sneak up on you. You find yourself responding to challenges with curiosity instead of defeat. You notice beauty where before you saw only routine. You act from abundance, not fear. Gratitude also guards against backsliding into scarcity thinking. It's easy to fall into old patterns, especially when life gets hard. That's why rituals matter. A gratitude journal on the nightstand. A sticky note on the mirror reminding you to name one thing you appreciate. A weekly gratitude walk where you reflect on the gifts hiding in plain sight. Tonight, take a moment to reflect. What tiny acknowledgments could you stack, day after day, that might quietly reshape your world over months or years? Remember, it's not the size of the practice, it's the consistency that compounds into prosperity. Next, we'll explore how gratitude doesn't just transform individuals, but also amplifies networks, creating ripple effects of collaboration and opportunity. Chapter 8. The hidden network effect of appreciation. Appreciation, like laughter, is contagious. It ripples outward, touching people beyond the original moment, igniting connections, strengthening bonds, and opening doors that remain locked to those trapped in criticism or scarcity. Gratitude isn't just a personal practice, it's a social accelerant, a force that magnifies collaboration, trust, and generosity across networks. In organizations, the power of appreciation is often underestimated. Leaders focus on strategies, metrics, and performance, yet overlook the simple truth that people perform better when they feel seen and valued. Gallup research shows that employees who receive regular recognition are more productive, engaged, and loyal. This isn't soft science. It's hardwired into human nature. People crave acknowledgement. When they receive it, they lean in. When they don't, they withhold their best. Consider two leaders facing the same challenge, a team under pressure, deadlines looming. One defaults to command and control, pointing out flaws, criticizing mistakes, tightening the screws. The other starts meetings by acknowledging what's working, highlighting team strengths, celebrating small wins. Which leader inspires greater commitment, creativity, and resilience? The answer isn't theoretical. It plays out daily in workplaces, families, and communities. Gratitude activates the hidden network effect by fostering environments where people feel safe to contribute, share ideas, and collaborate without fear of ridicule or dismissal. It lubricates relationships, easing tensions and smoothing friction points. When people feel appreciated, they're more likely to help others, offer support, and share resources. This creates a virtuous cycle of goodwill that strengthens networks from the inside out. A company in the hospitality industry struggling with high turnover once implemented a simple daily ritual. Managers began each shift by thanking their teams for specific contributions. The results were staggering. Morale improved. Customer satisfaction scores climbed. Turnover dropped. Gratitude wasn't a costly initiative, it was a shift in culture, a recognition that appreciation fuels loyalty and effort more effectively than pressure or perks alone. In communities, the same principle applies. Neighborhoods where residents acknowledge each other's efforts, whether it's tending a community garden, organizing a block party, or simply keeping an eye out for each other's kids, tend to be more resilient, connected, and thriving. Appreciation builds bridges across divides, fostering empathy and understanding. Even in online spaces, where negativity often dominates, gratitude can spark unexpected alliances. A struggling artist once took time to personally thank followers for their support. That simple act led to collaborations, commissions, and partnerships that elevated her career far beyond what marketing campaigns alone could achieve. People remember how you make them feel. Appreciation leaves an imprint. The beauty of the network effect is that it multiplies. One expression of gratitude can inspire dozens more. One appreciative leader can ignite a culture of recognition that ripples through an entire organization. One neighbor's thank you can spark a chain of generosity that transforms a block into a community. Try this experiment. Over the next week, deliberately express appreciation to 3 people each day. Be specific. Notice how their reactions ripple outward, how they engage with others, how the energy shifts. Watch as the invisible web of connection strengthens and expands. Gratitude isn't a solo act. It's a social force with exponential returns. Next, we'll explore how gratitude fuels not only connection but also resilience, becoming an engine that powers people through setbacks, failures, and storms. Chapter 9. Thankfulness as a resilience engine. Resilience isn't just grit or stubbornness. It's the capacity to bend without breaking, to adapt, recover, and grow stronger through adversity. Gratitude fuels this engine. It transforms setbacks into stepping stones, reframes failures as lessons, and turns obstacles into invitations for growth. When people practice thankfulness, they cultivate an internal reservoir of strength that doesn't depend on circumstances but emerges from within. Resilience often gets misunderstood as sheer toughness, as if the goal is to endure hardship by muscling through it. But resilience isn't about being hard. It's about being supple, like a tree that bends in the wind rather than snapping. Gratitude keeps the heart flexible. It softens the jagged edges of hardship by reminding people of what remains, what supports them, what they can still stand upon even when everything feels shaky. In communities ravaged by disaster, floods, fires, wars, researchers have observed a striking pattern. Those who bounce back faster are not always the strongest, the wealthiest, or the most prepared. They are the ones who gather to tell stories of survival, to honor the helpers, to give thanks for what's still standing. These communities rebuild not just because they have resources, but because they nurture an outlook that says, we still have something. Let's build from here. Gratitude acts as emotional calluses. It doesn't numb the pain, but it makes people more capable of carrying it without crumbling. Athletes who express gratitude for the process, not just the wins, are more likely to recover from losses, injuries, and setbacks. They see challenges as part of the journey, not as evidence that they're failing. There's a story of a woman who lost her business overnight due to a sudden economic collapse. Instead of spiraling into bitterness, she began a daily practice of writing down what the experience was teaching her: patience, adaptability, empathy. She thanked the hardship, not because she enjoyed it, but because she recognized it as fertile ground for growth. Within a year, she'd launched a new venture, stronger and wiser than before. Gratitude doesn't erase grief or struggle. It simply keeps them from swallowing you whole. It creates breathing room in the suffocating moments, allowing perspective to slip in. It reminds people that while they may not control the storm, they can control how they show up in it. In organizations, gratitude fosters cultures that embrace failure as part of innovation. Teams that practice appreciation for effort, not just outcomes, are more willing to take risks, admit mistakes, and learn from them. They see setbacks as data, not dead ends. This fuels resilience, allowing them to pivot faster and recover stronger. Even in personal lives, gratitude builds emotional endurance. Couples who express appreciation for each other during tough seasons weather storms better. Parents who model gratitude teach their children how to find light in dark times. It's not about pretending everything's okay when it's not. It's about holding space for both sorrow and gratitude, knowing they can coexist. Tonight, reflect on a hardship you faced. Ask yourself, what did it leave you with? What strengths did it reveal in you? What allies showed up? Let gratitude highlight the hidden gifts tucked inside the pain. Resilience isn't something you find when life is easy. It's forged in adversity, fueled by thankfulness. Next, we'll explore how gratitude invites people to redefine prosperity, moving beyond the ledger to a more expansive, life-giving vision of abundance. Chapter 10. Beyond the ledger, redefining prosperity. Prosperity, as commonly defined, is narrow. It fits neatly into spreadsheets, bank statements, and stock portfolios. It's measured by numbers, ranks, and possessions. But this definition is incomplete. It ignores the wealth found in relationships, creativity, purpose, and joy. It reduces a rich life to digits on a ledger. Gratitude cracks open that rigid frame and invites people to see prosperity as something far more expansive and life-giving. When gratitude becomes the lens, prosperity is no longer something you chase. It becomes something you experience right where you are. It shifts from being an external acquisition to an internal orientation. It's the difference between having abundance and being abundant. The former can be taken away. The latter becomes part of your very being. Consider the story of two farmers. One owns acres of fertile land, expensive equipment, and a sprawling estate. Yet he constantly frets about drought, market prices, and what his neighbor might be doing better. The other tends a modest garden, content with the rhythm of the seasons, savoring each harvest, grateful for what the earth yields. Which one is truly rich? Prosperity, it turns out, is less about the size of your field and more about the posture of your heart. This isn't romantic idealism. It's practical wisdom. People who define prosperity solely by accumulation often live in quiet fear of losing, of not measuring up, of falling behind. Their sense of enough is always just out of reach. Gratitude disrupts this pattern. It reframes prosperity as a multidimensional experience that includes health, relationships, creativity, contribution, and yes, finances, but not at the expense of the others. Ask yourself, what does rich feel like to you? Is it a number in your bank account? Or is it the warmth of shared laughter, the freedom to spend your days in meaningful work, the simple pleasure of a meal enjoyed without rush? When you expand your definition of prosperity, you open yourself to experiences that money can't buy, but that make life deeply abundant. Gratitude anchors you in this broader vision. It reminds you that wealth isn't only about possession, but about appreciation. You can have little and feel rich. You can have much and feel impoverished. The difference lies in what you notice, what you honor, and what you allow yourself to savor. In businesses, redefining prosperity through gratitude shifts cultures from transactional to relational. Companies that value employees, customers, and communities as partners, not just profit centers, create sustainable success. They focus on value creation, not just extraction. They measure prosperity not just by quarterly earnings but by the strength of their relationships, the loyalty of their customers, the well-being of their teams. In personal lives, this shift brings freedom. It breaks the chains of comparison, releases people from the exhausting race of keeping up, and allows them to build lives that feel rich from the inside out. It invites them to notice the abundance already present, the breath in their lungs, the people who show up for them, the skills they carry, the dreams that still flicker within. Tonight, take stock not of what you lack but of what makes you feel deeply alive, deeply connected, deeply whole. Create your own prosperity inventory. Write down the non-financial riches in your life. Let gratitude expand your vision of what it means to live abundantly. Next, we'll explore how gratitude, like any garden, requires daily tending to keep its roots strong and its fruits plentiful. Chapter 11. Water daily, reap endlessly. Gratitude, like any garden, withers without attention. Left untended, it shrinks back under the weeds of stress, comparison, and routine. People assume gratitude is a feeling that arrives when life is good. But those who experience its deepest rewards understand it's not something to wait for, it's something to cultivate deliberately, daily, as a practice as essential as brushing your teeth or watering your plants. Habits anchor transformation. The mistake many make is treating gratitude like a mood, hoping it will magically appear in the middle of chaos or busyness. But moods are fickle. Habits, once built, persist even when the skies are gray. They create scaffolding for the mind, reminding people to see what they'd otherwise overlook. Consider the gardener. She doesn't water her plants only when they look thirsty. She waters them daily, knowing the roots need steady nourishment, even when growth isn't immediately visible. Gratitude works the same way. Its benefits compound quietly, under the surface, strengthening mental roots that will sustain you when storms come. One simple ritual is the daily gratitude journal. Each night, list 3 things you're thankful for. They don't need to be profound. In fact, the more ordinary, the better. The warmth of a blanket, the smile of a child, the crispness of an apple. The practice isn't about grand gestures, but about training your mind to notice the small, steady gifts that fill your days. Another practice is the gratitude pause. Before meals, meetings, or major tasks, take a brief moment to acknowledge something you appreciate. This recenters your focus, shifts your mood, and grounds you in abundance rather than scarcity. Families can weave gratitude into daily rhythms. Around the dinner table, invite each person to share a highlight from their day. This not only builds connection but teaches children to scan for positives, a habit that will serve them for life. In workplaces, leaders can start meetings by recognizing team efforts or celebrating small wins. This simple act boosts morale, fosters loyalty, and reinforces a culture of appreciation that fuels engagement and performance. Gratitude rituals also serve as anchors in turbulent times. When life feels overwhelming, these practices become lifelines, pulling you back to the present, reminding you of what's still standing amid the chaos. They offer perspective, creating space between you and your problems, space where hope can breathe. The key is consistency. Gratitude, like exercise, yields its greatest benefits when practiced regularly, not sporadically. It's the daily watering, the patient tending, that produces a harvest. Some resist these practices, fearing they'll feel forced or artificial. But research shows that even when gratitude feels mechanical at first, the act of doing it rewires the brain over time. Like a muscle, it strengthens through repetition. Tonight, commit to one small gratitude ritual. Choose something sustainable. A journal, a family practice, a gratitude jar where you drop in notes of appreciation. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for consistency. Let the practice become as natural as tying your shoes. Gratitude's fruits are abundant, but they require daily tending. When you water this garden regularly, the harvest isn't just more joy, it's a resilience, an optimism, a sense of enough that weathers the inevitable droughts of life. In our final chapter, we'll return to the village where this journey began, revealing the truth that the garden was never barren, but their site was. Chapter 12. The garden was never barren. The villagers once believed their land was cursed. Year after year, they stared at the dry hills, the stubborn earth, the skies that withheld rain. They told stories of bad luck, of fate's cruelty, of a world that had turned its back on them. But the traveler who entered their village didn't bring rain. He brought a mirror. Through his stories, he held up a reflection of what they had refused to see, that the land wasn't barren. Their sight was. Gratitude had changed the villagers not by altering the soil, but by altering their relationship with it. When they shifted from focusing on what they lacked to honoring what they still had, their eyes opened. They saw cracks where water trickled, herbs where weeds once seemed to grow, opportunities where only obstacles had loomed before. The transformation wasn't external. It was internal. The same hills, the same earth, the same people. Yet everything felt different because they now looked through the lens of gratitude. This is the quiet power gratitude offers. It doesn't need to change the circumstances to change the experience. It doesn't wave a magic wand and erase hardship. It changes the lens, the story, the focus. And in doing so, it reveals abundance that was hiding in plain sight all along. For those who embrace gratitude as a daily lens, life stops being something they chase. It becomes something they cultivate. Prosperity is no longer some distant mountain peak visible only to the lucky few. It's a garden they tend each day, noticing the shoots, the blossoms, the fruit. Even the weeds become part of the beauty, reminders of life's imperfection and its relentless drive to grow, to flourish, to break through the cracks. The villagers didn't need better soil. They needed better sight. In your own life, this truth applies. The career you long for, the relationships you desire, the joy you seek, they may already be within reach, obscured not by lack but by overlooked presence. The question is not always, how do I get more? But often, what am I not seeing that's already here? Gratitude invites you to step off the endless treadmill of scarcity thinking and into a stewardship of what is. It teaches you that abundance isn't a prize at the end of the race. It's a practice, a posture, a willingness to see the ordinary as extraordinary. The garden was never barren. Tonight, pause and look around. What have you missed? What cracks are waiting for you to notice the trickle of water within them? What opportunities, relationships, or resources have you dismissed because they didn't look like what you expected? Gratitude isn't the end of the journey. It's the beginning of seeing differently, acting differently, and living differently. It's the choice to engage with the world not as a victim of lack, but as a steward of enough. As you close this book, remember this truth: the soil of your life is richer than you know. Your task is not to wait for it to change, but to tend it with eyes wide open, heart wide open, hands ready to nurture what's already growing. Because the land isn't cursed. The treasure isn't buried. The garden was never barren. It was waiting for you to see it. Take care and be well.